Yeah, I mean, I've been in marketing for 15 years. I have a past in the music business and songwriting and kind of a hodgepodge of message delivery, I'll say. It's just been a storytelling through line, I would say, throughout the process. Been through some ups and downs and had some very poignant, defined moments of being offered a second chance.
Welcome to our April show. You know, when people come to visit me in Arizona, I always tell them come in the spring. This is the most beautiful time of year here. The weather is wonderful. It's sunny. It's bright. And I always like the spring because, you know, you get through the winter wherever you are. In winter, it's usually dark and cold. In the spring, things start to blossom. Things get warmer. The sun's out and everybody's feeling really good. And it tends to be a happy month. I think especially when I look at all my honorable mentions, a lot of birthdays this month, a lot of birthdays. My daughter-in-law, Aaliyah, has her birthday this month. Happy birthday, Aaliyah. My grandson, Alex, turns 8 this month. Happy birthday, dude. His father, my son, Andrew, also has his birthday a few days after Alex. Daniel Bunn, who was a friend of ours, he was born a couple days after my son, Andrew. Reverend Richard Mirage of Unity Spiritual Center, he's having a birthday, and he's been on our show before. Astarte Barnett, happy birthday. My bestie, Maddie Williams, is celebrating a birthday. Rick Lewandowski in Michigan, who works in my practice, works remotely for me. Happy birthday. Barbara Mullet, Hardy Good, David Borneman, good friends of ours. John Spears. My agent, literary agent, Susan Crawford in Naples, Florida, is having a birthday. Jennifer Lloyd, who was Miss World pageant, celebrating her birthday, and she's been on a couple of our shows. Jerry Stadler, Lillian Evidente. There's a long list of birthdays. Also celebrating this month, my son Andrew and his wife Erin. Happy anniversary to you too. So lots of happy events. Also the month of April, you know, it ain't all about the Easter Bunny. I still remember when my son Andrew, great story. You know, we're Christian. I grew up Catholic, and we'd celebrate the birth of Christ every Easter. And of course, they always bring the Cadbury Easter Bunny, and they put the Easter Bunny out there and the Easter eggs. And I remember Andrew must have been 3 or 4, and he's trying to reconcile the Easter Bunny and Jesus and eggs. And he goes, "Mommy, but the bunnies don't lay eggs." What? And he would be very upset because it just didn't make sense, right? Didn't make sense. But the things that I look at this month about Easter is about second chances, about rebirth, about a promise that's upheld. And the majority of us who are Christian, who are Catholic, in my faith is Catholic, Easter, as well as the Nativity of Christ, are the most important celebrations in the Christian calendar. It culminates the Lenten season where we sacrifice, many of us fast, we give something up for Lent. We think of Christ's sacrifice of his life on the cross to redeem us for our sins. In other words, you know, can you imagine, hey, I'll go to jail for you so that you don't go to jail. I'll suffer to get you off the hook. Has anyone ever done that for you? Right? You look at all the people who say they love you so much, they give up their life for you, you know, and you look at that. How many people would die for you? And I look at the military. I served 24 years. And when we're in the military, you raise your hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And you make an oath, really, to support this country. And when you go put on the uniform, it means you're willing to die. That if they put you in harm's way, you will die. If you die, you come home, you know, with the American flag on, but you gave up your life. How many people out there would give up their life for their company? You know, you're willing to die for your company. We know firefighters, you know, put their lives online. Law enforcement people, healthcare workers are there in the face of viruses that we can't see, patients who can get violent. They're always in the midst of that. But you think of the sacrifice and dedication of dealing with that. So I think of that, especially this time of year with the death of our, you know, the physical death of Christ, the crucifixion, and of also of the resurrection, of new life, of hope, of rebirth, and of hope. And really, this is a season of rebirth, of change, of hope, and to bring us joy. And we look at our own rituals as we suffer through life and how we deal with difficulty, because everybody has difficulty in life. Every single person has difficulty. And I still see patients after 43 years of practice. I keep trying to retire. Something happens. I think God calls me back to say, you need to keep seeing patients until I tell you it's time to be done. And every patient has a story. And I really have the privilege to spend 90 minutes with patients for their annual exam. And, I go over, their data and all that. But I get to interview them like I do my podcast. And some of the people, I can read, their bios, their resumes, because I Google some of mine because they're very, very famous. But the things that come out in the interview about what makes them tick and their background and what made them who they are very illuminating. And they've all had some type of disappointment, some struggle in their life. And I really love the story of people who get turned around. My late husband, John Weber, was known as the turnaround guy. When a company was dying and failing, he would come in and turn it around to make it successful. And he would change it. And I just thought that's really tough. And I look at the words change, and I look at changes, look at the letters in the word changes. And if you change one letter, and that would be the G, you replace it with C, you get chances. So change gives you a chance. Chance gives you a change. So the G, change it to C, you get change and chance. So I think of this. So as I was planning for this show, I was sitting down with Andrew Stevens, who helps produce this, and I'm like, April is a month of rebirth, and we talk about how people can change. Who do you know? I said, Andrew, I've been going through my list of my friends, my contacts. Who do we interview? Who do you have in mind? And we're like brainstorming. And then he goes, what about Topher? What about Topher? And I think I've known Topher for about a year and a half or so. And Topher, first of all, Topher came into my life. I love the name Topher. Not that people are going to say gopher, but Topher is short for Christopher. Christopher Hall, Topher Hall. First of all, I'm going to tell you about his company because I got to know Topher through his company, Sprolo. And I'm going to ask you what it means. So first of all, welcome.
Hi.
Say, look at this I love this because usually when we do this podcast, Topher is on the other side of the camera. And now he's in the front of the camera.
That's where I've become comfortable back there. But yes, it's nice to be in front of the lens.
Yeah,
with
it's
you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you came up for a reason because Andrew goes, well, let me talk to him, see he's willing the show to start. And then he sent me your brief bio, and I went, oh my gosh! First of all, it's a good book, which you should consider writing your story.
Yeah.
And doing a screenplay.
Yeah.
But I think especially now we talk of second chances, and you bring up the theme of this month. For one of the groups you work with, it's the month of second chances.
That's right.
But your company, Sprolo, and you summarize it, it works, they work in marketing.
Yeah.
And we're all sort of marketing, right? We're in the media world. It's about the message. And nothing gets done in this world, in our lives now, without coming through you in some type of media. Whatever we think, feel, hear, sense comes through our ears and our eyes, right? And what kind of media? If the news, be it print, be it cyber, be it some way, how did you get that data, information, so that you hopefully can make an informed decision, a reflection of that data? So Sprolo is the company that Topher and his wife Megan founded and run, and it works in marketing and business consulting for small businesses, primarily in medical practices, medical spaces, although you do some work with behavioral health, local service businesses, and even some entertainment, which we're going to talk about too. So you've got a fascinating life. Do you mind just tell us about yourself?
Yeah, fascinating's a word for it, I guess. It's been an interesting ride, first of all, I'm glad to be here on Second Chance Month, which shout out to Prison Fellowship, who I think was instrumental in coining that and really thinking about this term as a way to hold that message through the month. But my story is a story of second chances, It's funny as that name came out, people, I would go into prison and talk to people, and they're like, "Well, what about my third chance? And what about my fourth chance?" And that, but it means bigger things than just the number two. It really is about healing and moving on, and kind of the evolution of the soul. But yeah, I mean, I've been in marketing for 15 years. I have a past in the music business and songwriting, and kind of a hodgepodge of message delivery, I'll say. You know what I mean? I've been message delivering through songs since 10 years old, finding my dad's guitar in the attic. And then since then, learning websites, learning how to convey visually and, messages visually, video, obviously. And it's just been a storytelling through line, I would say, throughout the whole, throughout the process. But personally, been through my own transformation, I would say, in the past. Been through some ups and downs, and had some very poignant, defined moments of being offered a second chance.
It's amazing about that point, because I never knew, because I've known you. We know each other through this. Yeah. But we really never know. I go, I just thought, he's an IT guy. He's the IT guy, right?
Yeah.
But you don't know the depth of the suffering you've been through and the changes. What was the worst part of everything?
Well,
what was the darkest?
I wonder, if, just as you've known me, as we've been working as colleagues, I guess, together, I don't come out with it on my sleeve, I suppose, and I'm wondering if I've always held it a little bit close to the chest when I'm meeting new folks, because it seemed like a chip in the armor, sort of, and a character defect and all that. But I think we're getting closer to realizing that even if it's not drugs and alcohol, lots of people have been through that kind of thing. And so, the need for change. But the worst part, I mean, there was a music business time in the life, and then everything that came along with that, the sad story of everybody that goes to Hollywood, tries to make it, and finds out that drugs can be delivered to your door 24/7. It took its toll, and it culminated in, I think, what was my main, when I say there was one part that I really heard God say, all right, you've had your wake-up calls. This is me actually, pounding with, not like this, but like this, with the full fist, and saying it's time, was when I put my head through a windshield, crashing into a government vehicle in Northern Virginia, after kind of coming back from Hollywood after several years. Blacked out, still clocked in at work at my bar job, and looking for other drugs, apparently. So that was the life I was leading. That errand I was on was a common errand, and it just happened to end that night like that. And then I woke up in the hospital. I'm not really sure what happened between point A and point B, but I woke up in the hospital. That was right before Christmas, 2010.
So your Christmas gift was another chance.
It didn't seem like it at the time.
You could have died, that. Did you sense you might have died? Did you get the feeling you could have died?
I mean, it was a gnarly accident, and I think I thought that on the hospital bed, I did bargain, I guess you would say, with God, or make a deal, and say, I hear you this time. You let things go right, I won't go back to it.
Wow.
And not that I don't ever think that I can impose a will on God, but it was a surrender, I guess, at that point.
Did you get help? Did you get rehab?
Yeah, so, went back and visited the car, and smashed up in the lot, and it all became real. We did go on the family vacation down to Arkansas to meet the Arkansas family for Christmas like we wanted to. So we pushed off what needed to happen, which was intensive outpatient care at that point. We were going to go in, and then, I managed to do what needed to be done with the help of my parents and girlfriend at the time, outpatient style. So we did, some pretty aggressive therapy, coming back into a sober lifestyle.
Wow. How long have you been sober now?
I did this math last night. I was at a meeting with a friend of mine last night, and I asked ChatGPT because I can never. I'm really bad with the dates. It was 12/21, 2010, and I think it was 14-ish years. I feel like it's either right before 14 or right after 14.
Wow.
It's been
My friends who are clean and sober, when I ask them their birthday, they give me the day of their sobriety.
Yeah,
they said that's the most important birthday.
That's what you remember. That's what you remember. It's weird though. I don't share it on social as much as some of my really plugged in recovery friends do. I don't like shout about each year, which I'm not sure why I don't really, but part of me wants to section it off and just move on and be happy about what's going on now. But I do. Every day is, you're only one bad mistake again from, messing up.
You know what impresses me about you is you're probably one of the most humble, understated people I know. Because, for somebody who's a songwriter and a performer, I mean, when you're out there in persona, I would never sing in public. But you have the guts to do that. I mean, the talent to do that. But, it's amazing how a lot of times we underestimate people. We'll see somebody and we'll just say, oh, he's an IT guy. He's cool. He's just a quiet guy, and you have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. And I thought, as I was coming over here, I think of how a lot of times we underestimate people. We go, well, they can't possibly do that. And I've sort of been the victim, not that I like doing the victim role, of all my life. Because, your gender is wrong, your ethnicity is wrong. You obviously can't speak English. I mean, and I still laugh because people, they'll look at me and they go, oh, there's no way you're a White House doctor, and there's no way in hell you were an admiral because you don't fit that stereotype. And I love, and I always respond, I just sort of smile. I mean, a little sense of humor. When my kids were little and I was living in Washington, D.C., and I was home one day with them, and in the military you have short hair, and I was a lot darker because I'd been out in the sun a lot, but I was in the front of the house with my two kids. And they were 3 and 5, and somebody came to the screen door in Virginia and rings a doorbell and looks through there, and he looks at me, and he looks at my kids. And my kids are half Caucasian, and so he automatically assumes I'm not the mother. I must be the nanny or the sitter. And they look at me, and I don't say anything, and they say, is the lady of the house home?
Oof.
And because they're looking at my kids, and then I don't say anything. And so what do people do when they don't think you understand? They repeat it very loudly, like somehow you're deaf. They go, is the lady of the house home? And I just smiled and I said, Missy, no home.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
But you try to, you teach them. But for you, you think of the people who get underestimated, a lot of ways can give a better message because it's the underdog.
Yeah.
And I thought about Easter. And if you would have said, you think of the best market, right? The message that sustains is Christianity.
Yeah.
It has survived how many years? Yeah. And where did it come from? It came from a carpenter. Mm-hmm. A carpenter, right? And a bunch of fishermen.
Yeah.
If you said, I'm going to have this mega company that the message is going to be transmitted all over the world, and people are going to still practice what I teach and quote me. Mm-hmm. How many years later from my podcasts, Sermon on the Mount, those were the early podcasts. Yeah. How many years, centuries later, but he doesn't even have an education. I mean, he's an apprentice carpenter, and he doesn't even work that much. And he's got a bunch of smelly fishermen who left their nets and they followed him. It's like, you got to be kidding me, right? Can you imagine?
That's good.
That's
I haven't
the
thought
messenger.
about that. Yeah.
That's the message.
Yeah.
So God always gets something that stands out that you're like, holy, because you've got, you know.
And I think that's a good example of the truth being, everlasting. The message that resounds, through the ages. Is that kernel of truth that everybody found to mean, to be objectively true for their lives, and so it mattered infinitely to everybody for decades or centuries. I've never known there would be a parallel between the Christian faith and marketing, but that's
the ultimate marketing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because what do you sell? I'm selling you Christ. I'm a salesman for Christ. Yeah. I'm selling you Christ. I'm selling you faith. I'm selling you the belief that when you die, it doesn't go away.
Right.
And as a physician in private practice, I mean, I don't proselytize. I I mean, but in a lot of ways, my private ministry is to share some hope. And I deal with elderly people who are very close to dying. I'm the one who signs the death certificate. And one of those conversations, we go through the life, and I love going through what did they learn in their life. I always ask the question, what would make life better? Because I always look at that. But it's about, what happens when we're done? What happens when we say goodbye? And what brings people peace towards the end of life of knowing it's not over. It's not over.
Yep.
And I come back in a better way.
Yep.
But I want to explore some more about your journey, about the things you learned, but also about your work with the Prison Fellowship.
Yeah.
Because I think we can learn a lot about prisoners. I mean, obviously they're paying a crime, for a crime, and these are guys who go out and come back. They come back into the world. And my only experience was probably the most interesting talks I've ever given was a couple of years ago. It was Perryville Prison, women's prison.
Okay.
And to go into there, be escorted in, and hear the gate lock behind me. But to be in the room with women who are there for various crimes, and again, they get it, serving their time, and to give them hope that, you made a mistake. It was a bad mistake. But you know what? You're moving. You're paying the price. You're doing it. You owned up to it, and then go on and make a better life after. So we're going to come back with Topher Hall talking about second chances. So stay tuned for more on House Calls. Welcome back to House Calls with Dr. Connie and Topher Hall about his amazing life of second chances. So songwriter, you started off life wanting to be a songwriter, saw Hollywood. Who was your manager? You had an amazing manager.
Me and this guy James, we were kind of the duo. We went out to Hollywood, gave up on a year of college. It didn't really work out. We actually just built a recording studio in my dorm room, and that was basically our I think I got a 0.5 GPA that year. But we moved out to LA and did the open mic circuit, and then we ran into Carol Peters after we did a show or a open mic at Genghis Cohen, which is a Chinese food place on Fairfax Avenue right there.
What a great name.
Yeah, and
Genghis Cohen. It's like Chinese Jewish.
That's I mean, I'm not aware of the genesis of it all, but that sounds about right. And it was and she took, I'll never forget this. She took us aside afterwards and said, I've been in this business for X many years, 20, 30 years, and you guys knocked me on my keister.
Wow.
And keister was the word, and that word will sit with me forever. But
you rarely hear that.
So she really had faith in us at that point. She signed us, and she signed us to Geffen Records. Got us with her son Evan, who was an A&R over at Geffen Records, and got us into the studio over there. And so we had a demo deal, rehearsal space, going in there to record where some of my idols record. Same kind of label-ish as Nirvana, which is where I grew up on, Geffen. And so it was all really, really cool. Yeah, that was, you find these peaks in your life with certain things you work on, I feel like. And that was a big peak there, and fun for the sake of fun. I'm glad, with everything that happened there. But beyond that is when the rest of the story started to unfold that brought me back to meet my wife, as I say it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the midst of the chaos and the drugs and alcohol that come with all that, it took me back to Virginia, but you can't, they say there's no geographical solution for a spiritual problem.
Yeah.
So everything came back with me, and that's where the accident happened. And I had met my then girlfriend, soon fiance, during it, and she was probably about to leave. She was probably about to leave with the way I was.
Oh, wow.
And it turns out she was calling me and looking for me that night, and kept going to voicemail, and got really worried because she was hearing sirens and activity below our third story apartment. And it turns out that was my car down there. So I had made it almost home. And so the sirens she was hearing were my sirens.
So she hung in there and married you?
She hung in there.
That's a good thing. If you can get through the worst time.
Yeah.
Worst time.
And I don't know that it would be like that otherwise, without the change that God's afforded me. So soon after that, things started to change. We moved apart, lived separately for a little while, gave us that distance, and really tried to do things right. as far as, laying the groundwork for a healthy relationship.
How did you form your company?
So I told you I got a 0.5 GPA, a stunning 0.5 GPA at George Mason University.
You're not Asian.
Yeah, I know. That counts me out. Yeah, but no, and then it's still probably not the Asian grades once I got done with the second round. But I did go to school again and went for marketing at George Mason University in Fairfax, and worked at Home Depot. Did the next right thing, as they say, and tried to keep doing it, and really liked it. I liked that it was about stories, and I liked that it was about message sending and getting it out there and getting it to land with people. So you got to meet them where they're at, and as far as how they want to hear messages and what will actually penetrate. And so I liked marketing; it was fine, and then it became kind of a passion to develop something that we could be proud of. So I did Sprout Local. It meant grow locally, Sprout Local.
Oh, okay. That's how you got it.
Yeah.
Sprout
And so I think Sprout Local was maybe taken, but this was back when all the short names were really cool, like Google and everything too.
Yeah.
And, it was still, and so mushing it together came up with Sprolo. And,
yeah, it's a good name.
It works. And I still think it's a mouthful, but it is what it is. And so I was in my parents' basement living there, and had some early clients that trusted us, and started to build a network of people that could help deliver with me. And
How many clients have you had over the years?
70 to 75, probably. Yeah.
Big contract.
Big. Yeah. Some of them really cool. Some of them really cool.
Was it the Badass Coffee guys too?
Yeah.
I like
yeah.
that. I like that
Badass Coffee
in
down in Tolleson. I worked with Randy when he had
awesome.
it down there. Badass Coffee in Tolleson. Yeah. And, several others. I got to work with this really cool AI school out in Austin that's coming to Phoenix.
Wow.
Yeah, they're 2-hour learning is what they're called, but they're really forward-thinking AI. It gets to expose you to so many different avenues, But we ended up really in the medical and sometimes behavioral health space, and got really good at those certain areas. So
just getting the word out about practices.
Yeah, just getting people to know the doctors and to care about these local, people, I'll say, versus the big chains like the Amazon One Medical and things like that.
So I got to share with you, my biggest pet peeve when I look at people's websites for doctors, you show me an empty waiting room. No, I don't want to see an empty waiting room.
That's so funny you say that.
I don't want to see that, because it means there's like nobody sitting there.
Yeah.
And if you're really doing good care, you shouldn't be having them wait very long.
That is so funny you say
Don't
that.
show me the waiting room.
I can still, yeah, because you know why it happens is because guys like me get sent photos from the practice. Like say we got a practice in New Jersey or Maryland. They'll send us a photo because we're like, we need some photos to put on, and that's the first one they'll send is their chairs all lined up on the wall.
I don't want to see it. I want to see your wait.
Yeah.
Show me the person at the front who's going to be smiling,
Yeah.
going, "Hi, welcome."
That's
I'm
the
here."
biggest pitch, Dr. Connie, is that these people are what matters and what can cut through. So we do optometry, but Warby Parker's here, all these big companies that are kind of faceless and compete on cost. What these local practices are really needing to do is make their doctors famous. Not really the practice itself, but make sure that people know who they are and want the care that they can provide. And so that's kind of where we're. So forget empty office space looking stuff. We're just going to arrive on the doctor, him or herself.
Because when I look, online at different people, I want to see the doctor's face, what I can look like from the face. If they're smiling, and then I look at the background, I'm going to make sure that all the credentials, and I look at what they do in their free time.
Yeah, that's a big piece.
I look at what keeps them active, what they're passionate.
It's a huge piece. Yeah, one of the most successful practices we work with in Boston is a very story forward person that talks about the things they do to give back, their mission trips they take down to Haiti and otherwise, and those are the messages he has us send out as mass emails. Whereas some people might say 2-for-1 deal, come on in for a 2-for-1. He'll say, my team is going to take some time off to go serve or something like that. And man, I got to tell you, I haven't seen a more brand loyal population to that.
Wow.
So, like you said, you learn what they're about, what makes them tick, and it starts to build that loyalty, and they feel like they're getting care from a friend.
So how did you get into prison ministry?
Yeah, we're glossing over that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there was a huge chunk of my life here that right after Home Depot, as I mentioned, I went to take an internship at Prison Fellowship, which Chuck Colson started.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, under Nixon. Yeah.
Under Nixon, yeah, the whole Watergate thing. You know, he went to prison. You know, when he was leaving prison, he famously heard, you know, "Don't forget us," you know, and that was his thing. And I was stamped all over the walls. Remember those in prison. That used to be the slogan. I think there's a new one now, actually, since I've moved on from work with them. But they remember those in prison is their big thing. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but it just. And the funny thing is, I would drive drunk and high across the street from that sign, that prison fellowship sign, all the time.
Oh my gosh.
And not know what it was. I'm like, what could that even be? What is a company that's called Prison Fellowship? Like, what could they possibly be doing? Just this weird thing, you know. It's like a thing you pass by. I wonder what that business is. And then come to find out, you know, after all the change, you know, I got an internship there, and I was still in college again. And rose up quickly under shout out Alan. You know, he's an innovation leader over there, and he got me quickly, you know, promoted and kind of could see what what I was capable of, and we quickly kind of got into a marketing groove of video storytelling and stuff like that we could they could rely on me for. So we got a nice little team. Drew, Chad, and me just touring the country, going into prisons and telling video stories that way.
When you go into a prison for the first time, what comes to mind? What kind of feelings do you feel? What do you observe?
Well, we were talking on break, and or maybe before, but that sound where the gate closes behind you is real for everybody.
Yeah.
It really is. You kind of empathize a little bit at that point with the population that won't hear it open back up anytime soon, and so that floods in as like wow, this is a real place that real people cannot leave, no matter what they do. No words will get them out right now, and it's a weird feeling. But then, you know, Prison Fellowship had such little pods of populations that they worked with there, and it was really just this magnet for great people that wanted to change and stuff like that. So you would be, I was exposed to people with amazing stories, you know, that had just, you know, they would say things like, "I'm free in here. I'm freer in here than I've been free anywhere else," you know, and because the distraction's gone, their stuff's gone, and they got to get back to their humanity, their God-given, you know, divine humanity again, and you could see it. You could see it in a way that you do not see it in society, where everything else is stripped away and you're only your personhood. You know, you really got to see.
You're all wearing the same uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all.
Yep. So
you're not distracted.
Not distracted, and people were. I mean, there's this video out there of mine. I'll send it to you. It's Heal. You know, I did this song, and the guys inside this one unit in prison learned it, and I went in and performed it with them. And I went in through the row and went into some of their cells. And one of this guy in his cell, he had a cardboard piano. Like he had made this cardboard piano and just was learning it, you know, just on a piece. I mean, it's like poster board from the dollar store.
Yeah.
And it was just so, you know, that always stuck with me. They're not done. They're not done. You know, they're ready for their next chapter. And so that second chance thing just became a big part of my ethos, I guess, at that time.
So what do you tell them when you see them?
First of all, we ask what's up, you know, what's going on?
Yeah.
How's life, you know, and they're eager to share too, because they make progress and they have things going on and they got, you know, but then we talk about, you know, we pray with them. We kind of spend some time hearing from them on their stories, because I think it's honoring for them to be able to tell new people their story and what they've been able to do with their time and stuff like that. But then everything, you know, everybody's different, but a lot of them just like to hear from you too about what's going on in your life. It's basically meeting a new friend, and you skip that pre-friend zone pretty quick, and you just kind of get into the deeper stuff.
Tell us about you.
Yeah.
How many of them do you know have gotten out successfully?
I know several have. If you watch that video, I think all of them have by now. In that video, I would think so. But you know, there's still 2 million locked up at any given.
What kind of crimes are they there for?
You know, everything from fraud to drugs. I mean, tons of drugs. You know, tons of drugs, and you know, things like manslaughter. So people have killed people. You know, people have killed people, and they're in there, and they have, big stories. There's it's something that we've always struggled with. I think Prison Fellowship has too, as an organization that cares about the prisoner. But what about the victim? And that's a very valid thing. And
Sure.
So there's things like victim impact panels and things like that they've tried to facilitate too. That kind of just show the bigger picture. You don't these people for by and large are coming back to your neighborhood. An overwhelming percentage of people that are in prison are coming back to your neighborhood. So the idea that we should care for them and try to get them on the right path is a valid one, I think.
So they don't go back. They don't commit another crime.
Yeah, so they're good neighbors when they get to your house.
They've learned a big lesson.
That's right.
They've learned a big lesson.
That's right.
How are you different from years ago?
Still working on myself. But I would say I'm grateful in a way that I wasn't before.
Yeah.
And start on that foot pretty much all the time, which is a really healthy way for me to be. And I don't drink or do drugs anymore. And I'm looking for people to hang out with because you are like your friends. And I'm looking for people to hang out with that do things like, do mountain trail running and work out and stuff, where I would just be, drinking alcohol, which is calories on calories. I mean, I was heavier. I was, I was, 230 maybe, at one point.
You're a big guy.
Yeah. And it's, but now I'm better.
You almost have to die before you get better.
That's how it happened.
And you married Megan, who's a PA.
Yeah.
What does she do?
Megan's she's a pediatric. She was a pediatric PA. She still got her license, but she's actually come over to Sprolo. She's always had her hand in, but she's really helped. We work with like APAC, and they're an awesome organization led by some great people, and those are the kind of clients that we work with that she really shines on, and really. So she likes where medical meets marketing.
Yeah, she speaks the language.
Yeah,
but she's teaching.
Exactly.
So what's your ideal patient? Your ideal client? Yeah. What kind of client works best with you?
We can improve local practices. So if it's a local practice, I know that we can. It's funny, we're in the business of turning down folks right now, which is because we're kind of at capacity.
That's good.
It's good. And we're trying to give what the clients that we do have more piece of the pie, and really kind of get not be transactional, but rather give them a 5-year curve that now they're on such a better path, and so medical practices, optometry practices, and then we have some behavioral health care therapy offices and things like that.
So you can tell how many people have looked at your websites for the So which one has gotten the most viewership, or most clicks?
Of things that I've done? It was probably an influencer campaign that we did with the professor and Jay Lyons. We brought this street baller from Venice Beach. He was on the N1 circuit a while back.
What's a street baller?
He's not playing professional basketball.
Okay.
He does a lot of ball handling. Okay. He's out there kind of breaking ankles, as they say.
Wow.
Really kind of doing a lot of moves and just takes a lot of pride in how the ball is handled and getting it to the net and in clever ways. It's very visually awesome to watch him. So we brought him into prison in Nebraska and put him against the best team that Nebraska could offer inside prison.
Yeah.
And they had a great time. I mean, it was amazing. And I think we're probably 1 million views on that, maybe. It was a big deal. It was a really special one.
To get the word out.
They get the word out. Yeah, but that's shout out Global Hooper. Shout out to Grayson out there.
So how do you go viral? How do people go viral?
Oh man, I wish I knew. Let me just say. I mean, it's saying the right thing at the right time.
And then people pick it up and they
pick it up.
They go crazy.
And they go
wildfire.
Crazy. Yeah, Jake Paul and them. They were. Andrew was telling me before. As we were filming, we're talking about that. And he's saying it can go both ways. You say something people hate, say something people love. And you say it at the right time with the right algorithm love. You're going to start to build that frequency. And I think the Pauls were saying we don't care whether it's negative or positive. I'm here to make entertainment. Is the currency, and so I'm trying to get in front of eyeballs, and so
it's getting the word out.
Getting the word out,
The movie that comes to mind is a movie called Chef. It was done a couple of years, like 10, 15 years ago, It's about a chef in LA who gets a critic to criticize him. And then he goes up on Instagram and he posts something. And then his kid, and he has no idea how to do social media. And his son goes, "Oh my gosh, you've gone viral." He goes, "What does that mean? Look at how many people are responding." And they go back and forth. And it's like, and it's conflict, right?
It is.
Because if you're nice, nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
If you're fighting with somebody,
that's exactly right.
They want to stand back and watch you two fight.
You know what? That's a really interesting kernel of truth right there. I might start some conversations with that with clients and be like, who can we fight with? Who can we fight with? Who's out there we can pick a fight with so we can make you famous? That's not a bad approach.
Yeah, who can you upset?
Yeah.
When you get emotional,
yeah.
You get a lot of people standing around because they want to watch the battle. They don't want to participate.
Right.
I just want to be, I don't want to be a bystander. But you pick a fight, right? And then you see what's trending. But I always tell people that if you're on the front page and you're getting bad news about you, just pause. Because then it'll go away.
Yeah,
it's going to go away. Because that happened to me. Oh gosh, 8 or 10 years ago.
I heard about that.
Chris Christie, Governor Christie. It was some comment. CNN came to me, and Chris Christie was going to run for president, and they made some comment because Chris Christie was on a, I think it was David Letterman. He was on a show on the Tonight Show, and he talked about eating, and he bit like into a sandwich or a bagel. He bit into something. And he was a big guy. Yeah. And so the CNN people called me, because I used to work with them at the White House. And they said, so if he came into the office, he became president, if he were president, and you were the White House doctor, would you be concerned? I said, well, when I see somebody of that size, well, yeah, of course. And I started listing all the medical stuff. So that, they went online and said, former White House doctor says, Governor Christie will die in office. Okay, so the next thing I know, he's on television with all his state troopers behind him, and he makes some comment about some hack doctor in Arizona says, I'm going to die in office, and my son heard it, my kid heard it, and they cry. And so that goes back and forth, back and forth. And so I was making trips to the local media, and they were interviewing me. And the final interview was with Wolf Blitzer from the White House press corps, who I knew under Clinton. And he calls me and says, hey, let's just quiet this down. It would come on Friday, go into the studio locally, and we'll broadcast. And I just look how the media. So on one side, you have Chris Christie saying, some hack doctor, split screen. And on the other side, I'm in my military uniform. I'm walking with the president on the South Lawn. Yeah. That's your hack doctor. Yeah. And then you have him biting into this. And so.
You don't look like a hack at that point.
So it's what people hear and see and say. Yeah. And it's sad that it's gotten nasty because it doesn't have to be, but it's what sells.
Yeah.
Controversy, really bad. Nobody wants to pick up paper and say, everything's great. Nobody died today. Everyone's happy. We're going to sell that.
Right.
So any final messages out there of the second chances of hope in this month of April?
Well, like I said, I think that every day I'm grateful these days. I actually have a lot to be grateful for, and so I'm glad for how far I've come. I'm excited for the future. I continue to work on my health. I continue to take inspiration from things like this, like the podcast you do. I think with the nutritionist that was on here and things like that. It's good to feed the soul with good information from good people, and so. I'm hoping to just be part of that flow that goes out there and help spread those words. But and then I'll become a rock star on the side again.
Well, you could.
Yeah,
you never know because somehow you can do a lot of things. Sometimes you just can't do it at once. Yeah. You had to pass through this journey to learn and say, you know what, I'm ready to do this. Because I started off life wanting to be a teacher. Then I thought I want to be a writer. But then nobody wants to do writing as much because they don't make a lot of money. And I could do more as a doctor. But then I realized I love being a doctor, but I can probably spread more message if I write or podcast.
Right.
So your audience shifts.
That's
who
right.
you want to work with. And I get the best stories from patients, and just as you get the best stories from people you interact with.
That's right.
So any final words for Easter and this month of April?
Believe in second chances.
Yeah, there you go. It's all about second chances, all right? So change and second chances are important. So y'all have a great rest of the month. Happy springtime, and we'll talk to you next month. Thanks for tuning in on House Calls. Thanks, Topher.